Bad movies are so back. Bad movies are so back. Welcome to Coffee Nick's Movie Picks, where bad movies are so back. This is your bold blend of coffee and movie review podcasting. My name is Nick Delaney, and I am your show host, coffee and movie reviewer, and the guy who has officially been doing this for a full year. In this episode, we'll be celebrating the show's first birthday with a double feature discussion of famously bad movies, Madame Web and Catwoman. To offset the negativity of those reviews, we will be pairing these films with a review of the lovely Candied Orange Mocha from Cure Coffee House. Please take a seat, stay a while, and let's talk He Was in the Amazon with My Mom when she was researching spiders right before she died, over some coffee. One whole year of Coffee Nick's Movie Picks. Wow. 1 year. Oh my God. Thank you, everyone. This was such a fun year. Happy birthday to the show. And I think the first thing I have to say for this celebration is thank you all so much for listening. Thank you for tuning into this show. It means so much to me. This started out as a show where I didn't think anyone would listen at all. So to have people tune in and, talk to me about my show that I'm putting out has just been such a joy and such a pleasure, such an honor. So thank you for tuning in. I think that the biggest thing that I have learned from this past year of doing the show is kind of how I think of the show. And I used to think of it as just, I'm getting on the microphone to talk about movies for an hour. But it's really come such a long way in my mind where now I think of it as like I'm sitting in a coffee house almost and just having like a very casual and thorough discussion with a close friend, even though I'm, just talking into the void right now, technically, like in my bedroom. I think of this as like we are connecting over all of these different topics that we like to discuss, and it's come to be something that I really enjoy and look forward to. And that's been such a pleasure to do. So thank you for listening to the show. Thank you for joining me for all of these different episodes. And also, thank you for just allowing me the space to try out new things with the show. I know I had so many lofty goals when I started this show, and I'm honored to have, hit those goals. I really wanted to do the Gretathon, and I was able to do that. I really wanted to have the show become a video podcast, and I did do that, and now I'm kind of stepping away. But thank you for just allowing me the space to try things. This has also just been a great creative outlet for me. So thank you for being patient with me, and thank you for also being willing to try new things with me. It's been really nice. And usually in the show, when I hit milestones, like when I started the show or after the Gretathon, I usually had sort of lofty goals moving forward of, I want to do this and this and this. And that's great. And I'm so glad I was very ambitious. But right now I am enjoying the show as it is so much. And I want to keep just doing that. So I am just going to keep doing what I'm doing and having the best time with it. So I wanted to do something special for the 1 year mark. And if you were around for the very first episode, you know that I started the show off with a really, really bad movie that I reviewed. And I feel like the early days of the show were definitely highlighted by very negative discussions of movies. The other movie I think of when I think of the start of the show is David Lynch's version of Dune, which is also a very bad movie in my opinion. And so to celebrate 1 year of the show, I wanted to bring back bad movies. So here we are having a discussion with the notorious Catwoman and Madame Web films. So, bad movies are so back. Getting right into things, Now Brewing is a luxury coffee discussion and review segment. Now Brewing in today's episode is the Candied Orange Mocha from Cure Coffee House in Newport News, Virginia. I was so nervous to try this place out because this coffee house took the spot of my old favorite coffee house in Newport News when I was going to school down there. So I was very reluctant. I was like, will this live up to the place that was here before? And I have to say that it absolutely did, if not exceeded the place that was there before. So this coffee house serves counterculture coffee, which is based in Durham, North Carolina. I've had counterculture coffee before, and it's really good. And I got it from a grocery store, so definitely check your coffee aisle. You might be able to try it yourself. So I was really excited to see that they were also serving this brand of coffee because I have a good perception of them. The atmosphere of Cure Coffee House was really great. I really loved it. It felt very cozy, but at the same time also very clean and sleek and modern. So I like that it balanced those two things really well. It had some really nice decorations, especially over by the bar, because I believe they serve some alcoholic drinks. I'm not sure. But very nice decor. This is definitely a nice place to go to catch up with someone or to get some work done. Talking about this beverage, the Candied Orange Mocha. This was so good. This was such a good drink. I don't know the name of this candy, but do you guys know the candy that's like the chocolate that's shaped like an orange that tastes like oranges? It's very much that, obviously. It was just so well done. The chocolate flavor was so rich and creamy. It was great, but it wasn't overpowering. A lot of people think when they think of mocha, they think of that one corporate coffee chain that I never mention on this show. They think of like that very dark, intense flavor. And it wasn't like that type of mocha, but it was still a very rich, kind of milk chocolatey flavor. And I was a little worried that the orange part would kind of get lost in the flavor profile here, but it was very on par with the mocha, but not overpowering in its own way either. It complemented the mocha very well. These flavors were very well balanced. This was just a delicious drink, very refreshing, perfect, 10 out of 10. I loved it. The espresso in this was also really great. I don't know much about the espresso at this coffee house, but this drink, it ate. It ate. It was so good. And I don't know what else to say about it. This is a very quick coffee review, but if you are near Newport News, if you are living there, definitely go to Cure and try out this drink. And they had so many other really unique sounding coffee drinks. So if I'm back in the area, I will be stopping by Cure again. So thank you, Cure, for this drink. I'm going to think about this for a long time. I think, in fact, I've thought about this Candied Orange Mocha maybe every day since I've got it. And that was like 2.5 weeks ago, which is kind of crazy. But I've been thinking about it a lot. With all of that being said, I'm going to give the Candied Orange Mocha from Cure Coffee House in Newport News the Nick pick. Moving right along, because we have a lot to discuss today, the Coffee Thought. This is an outlet dedicated to voice my many incoherent thoughts over a lovely cup of coffee. In today's Coffee Thought, I think I'm also going to be a bit brief with this as well. I want to talk about Beyoncé, which I have done on this show before, and I want to talk about Taylor Swift, which I don't think I've done, but I should mention I am a Taylor Swift fan. I wouldn't say that I'm deep in the Swiftie community fandom, but I am a Taylor Swift fan. I will listen to all of her albums. Now, these two women I have noticed have been subject to an outrageous amount of scrutiny recently, and this has been the story of their careers. I think that these two specifically have always been just the source of like a lot of mean and nasty comments, much like a lot of women who are in the public eye. This is not new news, but these specific instances of Beyoncé and Taylor Swift have somewhat overlapped in the past few weeks. Now, Taylor Swift was at the Super Bowl because she is dating Travis Kelce, and he was playing at the Super Bowl. And Beyonce won Country Album of the Year and Album of the Year at the Grammys. I just would like to say that, aren't you tired? Aren't you all tired of hearing slash, or if you're the one saying these comments, just the endless amount of bullshit that is thrown at these women and the close-mindedness that so many people have with these two women, especially Beyonce. It's just so sickening and so frustrating to me how cyclical this is as well, where, these two women are rightfully popular because they are both incredibly talented and they grow a huge following. And then the media starts paying attention because there's a huge following attached to both of them. And then the media overexposes them, and people get really tired of seeing these two women on their screens. And then people feel entitled to say all these nasty comments about both women. And eventually the women are kind of forced to retreat, go into hiding, and come back later to their more loyal audience. And then people start catching on again, being like, oh, wait, she's really great. And they go back, and then the media attaches themselves again, overexposes them, and then people are nasty again. It is really annoying how cyclical this cycle is, I think. Talking a little bit about the instance with Taylor Swift, she went to a football game, and, if someone as popular as her goes to a football game, she will show up on the Jumbotron. You can guarantee it. You can guarantee it. But when she showed up, when the cameras were pointed at her, she was met with a lot of booing and jeering and yelling. And this just really grinded my gears. This made me really upset. She cannot even go to a football game where the person she is dating is playing. She can't even go and watch the football game. She wasn't even doing anything. It's not like she made the cameras look at her because she was putting on a stunt or anything. She was sitting in the bleachers. Just sitting there watching the game, and people start booing at her. Talking a bit about the instance with Beyonce, Cowboy Carter was made because it blends all of these different genres together. And it is a response to all of Beyonce's critics, especially after her Country Music Awards performance with the Chicks. It is a response to all of her critics basically saying that she's always been country and she has every right to do country and she's going to make country her own way. And, as she was saying when she released this album, this is not supposed to be a country record. This is a Beyonce record. So many people I'm seeing are like, why'd she win? Like, she's not a country artist, blah, 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 blah. God forbid someone experiment with genres and be recognized for it. God forbid someone do something new. And to me, this is an assumption, but I get the feeling that all of these people that are saying that this isn't even a country record, Beyonce is not a country artist, I have a feeling that they haven't listened to anything past Single Ladies, maybe Formation, if we're lucky. I certainly don't think they've listened to anything off of Cowboy Carter, maybe Texas Hold'em, maybe 16 Carriages. I just get the feeling that 90% of these people have not given Beyonce the time of day. Or if they do listen to Beyonce, they're listening with a very closed mind. I think what I want to say is I'm just very, 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 very tired of this useless hatefulness, this just very unnecessary negativity that we are throwing on people, like real life people. Because, yeah, they are celebrities, but that is like just another human being. And my last note is I think that this is very much a sign of the America that we are now in. And I think we were doing better for a period of time. And I think now we're not. Because look at the decisions that the American people are making on a larger scale. And this is quickly becoming a breeding ground for baseless, nasty, negative comments. This is becoming a society where these comments go by with no accountability. And in some instances, they're even encouraged. So if you're one of the people, the lovely people listening to this, I invite you to hold others accountable when they say nasty stuff. If they are joining in these nasty comments, be like, hey, why are you doing that? Why are you saying that? Have you listened to all of Beyoncé's discography? Who are you to say that she's not a country artist? Okay, I think it's time for me to move on. Do you think it's time for me to move on? All right. Now showing our feature ideological analysis and critical film review segment by yours truly. Now showing in today's episode is a double feature birthday bash of bad movies. The first film we'll be discussing in this double feature special is Madame Web. Madame Web is a 2024 film, part of the Sony universe of Marvel movies. It follows the story of Cassandra Webb, played by Dakota Johnson, a paramedic who dies while on the job and comes back to life with the ability to see things before they happen. When she has a vision of 3 young girls all being brutally killed on a train by a mysterious, superpowered man, she takes it upon herself to protect the girls and change a predetermined future. And I promise that it's not as cool as I just made it out to be. Where do I even begin with this film? Where do I even begin? When I first saw this in the theaters, I was blown away by how ridiculously bad it was. I will start at the beginning, like all stories do. In the opening sequence of this film, Madame Web, it shows the famous mother who died while researching spiders in the jungle. It shows her. It's kind of like the prologue. That's the right word, right? Prologue. The prologue to the story. Right away, in maybe the first minute, the guy who turns out to be the villain, I don't know his name, henceforth known as the guy, in the first minute, his lips were not moving to match what he was saying. And I was like, oh, okay. There is some messy ADR present in this movie. If you don't know what ADR is, I believe it stands for Automated Dialogue Rendering. Let me check. No, Automated Dialogue Replacement. So sorry. So this usually happens in post-production where they need to change something or they need to clarify something in the film. So they have someone record a voiceover that they put into the scene. So it's kind of like dubbing. If you watch anime or something, basically somebody is talking over visuals that are already there and they have to make it work somehow. Usually, so the skill here would be making it work and like making it look seamless, and you can't even tell that they shot what the person is saying after they filmed it. It is really, really bad and obvious in this film. And the thing is, there's this instance in the first minute, and it does not stop throughout the whole movie. It keeps happening, and it's really, really bad. And it's usually with this villain character. What doesn't help is the acting is really bad. It's very, very flat, and there's like no emotion of any type. It sounds like they had him in the in a closet somewhere, like recording these lines to send back to Sony HQ or whatever. It's bad. And that makes me wonder, like, what exactly was the original plan here? Like, was this villain very quiet and didn't say much at all, and they decided they want him to say a lot more? Was this villain like completely different? Was he saying like completely different things? I don't know. But from what I hear about this movie is that nobody really knew what was going on. And even afterwards, I think it was Dakota Johnson, she was like, "Yeah, I don't know." Which love Dakota Johnson. Um what was happening? And I think it's that first option where I think they wanted this villain to be very quiet and menacing, but when his acting wasn't that great, they maybe made him record more lines so he could convey more. I really don't know. I guess we'll never know. But right away, we are greeted with mess, with abundant amounts of mess. Also, in this first sequence, the editing is just immediately very jarring. There are abrupt and frequent cuts. I mean, it could be someone like turning around and there's like three separate cuts. And I don't know why they do that. It could be like someone's in the middle of like an important line and it cuts maybe three different times. It kind of reminds me of the award winning editing of Bohemian Rhapsody, where it's just like very jumbled up, very bad, very abrupt, unnecessary, and just a lot. And the trait of good editing, I'm of the belief that good editing goes by unnoticed and it's very impactful and it enhances what you see. And you shouldn't really be like, "Oh wow, that was a lot of cuts," or "Oh wow, that was a weird cut." It should be very unnoticed. And also, specifically in this first sequence, I noticed that this was shot like a video game cutscene. There was just like weird zooming in the middle of shots happening. So carry those things like throughout the entire movie. That's kind of the tone we have for the rest of the movie. It's just not good. It's really not great. It's not great here, I'm afraid to admit. I think one thing that doesn't help this is the cast. You can very clearly tell that everyone in this movie did not really want to be there. Specifically Dakota Johnson, and although I think she gave a fine performance, I mean, can I say that? I don't I actually I take that back. Maybe she didn't, but you certainly either way, you certainly can tell she did not want to be in this movie. And if you couldn't tell by the movie, then watch the press tour for this movie. This movie also had a famous press tour just on how chaotic and how much it poked fun at the movie itself. She might even explicitly state at one point how she didn't want to be there. And it is stated how she did not bond at all and didn't care to get to know the three girls that were a part of this movie. Uh, I think another actor who was in this that didn't want to be there was, what's his name? Adam Scott, who plays Uncle Ben, Ben Parker. There was also an Emma Roberts jump scare in this movie. I think out of all of these performances, maybe the best one was from Sydney Sweeney. She actually did a fine job. And, considering the material that all of these actors had, I don't think that anyone specifically did horribly except for the villain. The villain, I'll just get into that now. Maybe some of the worst acting I've seen. And let's look up, what is his name? What is this guy's name? Tahar Rahim played Ezekiel Sims. That's the name of the villain. Tahar, I'm so sorry, but you did not do great. What was he in previously? Napoleon, I noticed that. Oh, and Mary Magdalene. I've actually seen that in my early days, my childhood. Oh, he was in Gladiator. Okay. Mufasa the Lion King. So he's had something recent. I'm glad that he's been able to continue after this movie. Okay, so not a very expansive, at least not an expansive list of movies that I recognize. it was really not great. There was a part where he fell off a building, and that's the part where he died at the end. And I don't know, like I don't think I could be in a movie. I don't think I can act well. I haven't had the opportunity recently, so who knows, but I feel like falling off a building, that's pretty easy to act out. Like I could make that happen. But somehow he made falling out of a building very lifeless and emotionless, which seems like a very hard thing to do. Also, who is this character in the comic book? Who is Ezekiel? Because he was wearing like a Spider-Man suit, which confused me. He looked a lot like Spider-Man, but he was just evil guy who wanted Spider for power. Okay, let's see. He is a recipient of the spider totem powers through a mysterious ritual, sought fortune following his newfound abilities similar to Spider-Man's. He took measures to protect future spider totems from entities like Morlun. He joined the Spider Society, aiding the formation of WebCorp as a front. Okay, so that, like, I did not understand any of that. This is like deep Spider-Man lore, I'm assuming. Also, this is from marvel.fandom.com, so thank you for that information. Uh, yeah, so I don't know what that means. Obviously, like, Madam Web is not a very well-known Marvel character, so I guess the villain doesn't have to be very well-known either. But there really was not a lot of villain happening. His character was just not a thing in this movie. He was evil billionaire who wanted power or just wanted to save himself, so he was trying to kill these girls who he had visions of killing him. Um so just like very surface level stuff here. That this was not a villain with depth at all, which is refreshing sometimes because villains have gotten so much like depth recently, especially in superhero movies. So it was fun to just have like a Saturday morning cartoon villain, just evil for the sake of evil. But come on, like we could have had something. We could have had something else here. I think we were all got by this movie. We got here because the trailer led us to believe that there was action in this movie when there was very clearly not. And it showed the three girls who Madam Web, Cassandra, is saving. It showed them all in like their Spider Girl outfits. Then, come to find out, the trailer is basically showing us everything we see of them in those outfits. Like, we were very much led on by this movie, I think. And I don't know. I think this movie, we didn't necessarily need to have action. That's fine. But we were tricked. Like, we were very much tricked by the marketing of this movie. Like, it would have been cool to have a comic book movie that's more of just like a thriller mystery sort of thing. But I just feel like they were trying to please too many different crowds here. And I think this leads very well into just how forced some of the comic book stuff was and how Ben Parker was like a major character. That just did not need to happen. And like, I don't know, now like canonically, or I guess canonically within the Sony universe, which nobody cares about, Ben Parker was like heavily involved in like the Madam Web plot. And I think that kind of defeats the purpose of like who Ben Parker is. Like, you know, Aunt May and Uncle Ben are sort of supposed to be like just your neighbors, like very regular people, which is why Spider-Man, he's like your neighborhood Spider-Man. I don't know. Like having him be a part of like this huge scheme doesn't really work well, and it's just so forced. And the whole like Peter Parker thing, Emma Roberts is pregnant with Peter Parker. I'm like, Emma Roberts is not Aunt May. I'm so sorry. Like that's just not happening. It was just too forced. We did not need that. Like, why do we care if we're seeing Peter Parker as a baby? Why do we care if we're seeing Uncle Ben content? I'm sorry, we just don't need that. We do not need that. And then getting to just the writing of this movie, it was like every single line was some sort of cliche. To know the future, you must also know the past. And with great responsibility comes great power. Again, another forced Spider Man reference that we just did not need. And like, my life began when I died. And I know who I was when I looked towards the past. Just the way in which these lines are read is just a very cliche tone. And then just the writing itself is so cliche. It's so cringy and bad. It's so uninspired. And it just feels like corporate slop. Like Sony was like, okay, well, what other Spider-Man properties can we use to make some money? And they're like, okay, well, like, let's make a Madam Web movie. This is it. And there were no unique ideas going into this, it seems. Like, nothing visually, nothing narratively. Eh, None of the performers really brought any unique ideas. It was just, this movie is frustrating, but it is so funny and ridiculous to watch. I do have some things I would just like to mention. First of all, the baby shower scene where they're talking about like their stories with their mothers, like going around in the room and like trying to be inspirational to Emma Roberts. And Cassandra is like, well, my mother died during childbirth. Oh, it's okay though. It doesn't happen that much. Oh, well, it does happen actually. It's just like so bad. It's so cringy. There are two separate occasions where Cassandra, Dakota Johnson's character, is offered a can of soda to drink. And both occasions, for the entire scene where she's holding the soda can, she doesn't open it, and she's just kind of like fumbling with it and like fingering the soda can, and like she'll like almost open it and then someone says something and she doesn't, and then she's like kind of passing it back and forth to between her hands and everything. It's just like really weird. And this has to just be like Dakota Johnson like not being able to figure out what to do on set. It like, why not just, was she directed not to open the can? Because that would be my thing. Like, it just, you're handed the can, just open it. You know, it so weird. Um, Also, this film very badly wanted you to know that this took place in 2003. Like, it was hitting you over the top of the head with 2003. Toxic by Britney Spears, of course. There was a Beyonce Dangerously in Love billboard, like completely taking up the side of a building. And it was just very like odd placement. And look, I'm all for it. I love seeing Beyonce in movies, but it was just very like, oh, that's there. There's nothing else like that in this movie. It's like very prominent. And it's just like, okay, well, like, what else can we do to tell someone this takes place in 2003? Oh, fuck it, throw in a Beyonce billboard. I mean, for my audiences that were like conscious and alive during 2003, I was alive then, but not fully aware. Were Beyonce billboards like common in New York City? Was that like a thing? I please, I'm curious. It was just, yeah, this is not good. It's not a good movie. There's just a lot of the scene, the whole forest sequence. Like, all the girls are just kind of standing in a forest, like talking to each other. It feels very uninspired because it's like, okay, well, like, we have to have them have this conversation. So just put them in a forest, and like put the car in a forest, and they'll just be talking in the middle of a forest. Um, and it feels very not creative. Like, You couldn't give them like a cooler, more interesting place to be, or like the Pepsi Cola warehouse filled with a bunch of fireworks. I why? Why? It just is not making sense to me. It's really not. Was there anything I liked about this? I do think the dream sequences that Dakota has, there was something there. Did it work? Did it happen? No. But there was a glimmer of like maybe something cool could have happened. Like maybe they could have expanded like the glimmer of like creativity I saw within those dream sequences. Maybe they could have expanded that to the rest of the film. Maybe if this was kind of like a noir mystery thriller movie, it would have worked better. Like almost like Dakota's a detective. I don't know. And did there need to be a villain? I don't really think the villain needed to play as prominent a role as he did. I think that the antagonist of the movie could have been more on the back burner. I don't really think I needed to see him that much. Maybe that's just because I did not like this performance at all. I don't know. Overall, though, to oh my god, and the ending. I'm not done. I'm not done. The ending is so ridiculous. It is so ridiculous. The wheelchair reveal. Why is she in a wheelchair? I don't understand. What happened to her? Because like she fell in the water and those like fireballs or whatever, the debris like hit her eyes. So yes, she was blinded. How did she get in the wheelchair? And just like the oh my gosh, the scene of her in the hospital room with the big ass bandage wrapped around her head. I have that saved on my phone somewhere, and I do send that to people occasionally. And her final costume with the big ass red glasses and the red lipstick and the gloves and her like floating in midair. It's so camp. It's so ridiculous. Like it looks like Dollar Tree Party City. I just cannot believe they put this on screen. And you could probably, I feel like if you know the show, you know where this bitterness is leading to. And I will get to that after Catwoman. Trust, trust. Okay, to no one's surprise, I am going to give Madam Web the Nicks. Madam Web is not bad, and it's not so bad it's good. It's a horrendous clusterfuck of a movie. Tangled up by an obscene amount of cliched dialogue, uninspired situations and settings, actors that clearly don't want to be there, obvious and unabashed ADR, a hilariously bad villain, tons of product placement, forced comic book references, and a lackluster story, this film lives up to, if not surpasses, its devastatingly low scores. Madam Web feels like even after production, it could never figure out what story it wanted to tell, which makes me wonder how anyone ever saw a bright future for this. Get it? Seeing the future? Bright future? Yeah, this movie sucks. This is bad. And watching it the first time, I saw this in theaters and I was like, ha ha ha, this movie is so bad it's good. This is so ridiculous and funny. Uh yeah, you could definitely get that from the first time watching it, but the second time, this is hard to get through. This is really hard to get through, especially watching it by myself. I was checking my phone during this movie so much. So, if you've not seen this movie before and you want a good laugh, you want something stupid to watch with friends, turn this on, sure. You could definitely get a good laugh out of it. It's definitely so bad it's good for the first time watching it. But if you have seen this before, do not go back to it. Do not. Okay, wow. Oh my god, I have another really bad movie to talk about. Why did I do this? Why did I do this? God. Oh, this is like a form of torture. I swear. I thought this would be fun to discuss all these bad movies, but it's not. Come to think of it, this is exactly how I felt discussing Argyle. I was just like, you get to the point where it's like, I am so exhausted with how many bad things I have to say about this movie. It truly is like so much more fun and refreshing and fulfilling to talk about good movies. It just doesn't feel good to just extensively talk about these bad movies, but this is what I signed up for. This is what I promised. And I remember months ago, like early on in this show, I said I would do this episode. So here we are, finally doing it. Getting into it. Catwoman is a 2004 DC Comics film that is the origin story of Patience Phillips, a shy artist working for a mega cosmetics company who, when overhearing the dark secrets of an anti aging lotion, is killed. Brought back to life with cat like powers from ancient mystical spirit cats, Patience dons the persona of Catwoman as she navigates her now complicated personal life and exacts revenge by exposing her company's evil plot. Where do I start with 2004's Catwoman? I think, much like Madame Web, I think that the best place to start is at the beginning. This film opens the opening credits. It opens with the opening credits, of course. And the opening credits are set to like flashes of different Egyptian hieroglyphics and then like old documents of like these cat people and like mentions of like witches and everything. And the very first line of this movie, which I was so taken aback by that I just had to write it down. It's quote, "It all started on the day that I died. The day that I died was also the day that I started to live." End quote. That sets the tone for the entire movie moving forward. Much like the jungle scene in Madame Web sets the tone for the entire movie. Right away with this movie, notice how I'm not calling either of these movies films. With this movie, you can tell that they fundamentally do not understand who Catwoman is or what Batman slash Catwoman fans would hope to see in Catwoman's own movie. This is obvious right from the get go. Because why would they show us like old historical documents and I it it just baffles me. I want to get right into this. So this is not Selena Kyle's Catwoman. This is not the Catwoman we know and love. This is Patience Phillips. So an entirely different character, but also not, because there are a lot of parallels here to the Catwoman that a lot of people are familiar with. Take, for example, Michelle Pfeiffer's Catwoman. She was also killed because she overheard an evil corporate plot and was thrown out of a window. Patience Phillips, what same thing happened to her, but she was flooded out of a sewer grate and drowned. And both of these Catwomen are very focused on revenge and like dismantling this corporate plot. They're both very like romantic with the person that's trying to take them down. Michelle Pfeiffer's Catwoman with Batman. This Catwoman, Halle Berry's with this police officer guy who we do not know. So, you know, you would think because this character goes by a different name, she is a new character, but they're still relying on some of the things that people know Catwoman for. She still uses the whip. She still has kind of like this leather outfit. Um, she's still in kind of like this city setting. So, which is it? Did they want this to be like a completely original character and story? Or is this Selena Kyle's Catwoman? My next question is this even in the Batman DC Comics universe at all? Or is this just kind of like, are they trying to have this be a completely original story? because there is no mention of Gotham City in this movie even. Not to mention like Batman or any other Batman villain. There is not even a mention of Gotham City even though this takes supposedly takes place in a city. We don't know what city it is. And so like that leads me to the question is who exactly is the audience for this movie? It's clearly not Batman fans because there's like no even reference to Batman movies. And like I know I just bashed Madam Web for heavily relying on like Spider-Man references when it didn't need to, but like to neglect even the city that it takes place in because it would reference Batman, that's crazy. And that's not necessary. Like, we can be realistic. Like, yes, we know this takes place in Gotham City. So, like, what was the vision here? Who is this for? And like, are they trying to appeal to people who are not like comic book superhero movie fans? Like, are they trying to appeal to like more casual audiences more? Which that doesn't make sense because they literally gave Catwoman supernatural abilities, which she really never has. Like, she kind of just has a cat aesthetic. Like, she doesn't have cat abilities, at least in like most adaptations and iterations of her. Maybe there's some niche comics that she has like cat like abilities, but that's really not the norm. So I don't think that this was for general audiences because they kind of went harder down like a whimsical, unrealistic comic book route. Uh, I don't fucking know. I don't know. Like, what am I supposed to say? What do you all want me to say? I have nothing to say. Maybe I know I mentioned this in my Batman Returns episode. They were planning on having a Catwoman spinoff that was about Michelle Pfeiffer's Catwoman, and they just completely scrapped it when Tim Burton's Batman vision died off. So maybe they were trying to do that, but they couldn't get Michelle Pfeiffer back. So they were like, okay, well, like when people think Catwoman, they think Michelle Pfeiffer. So like, how do we make this different? And so they try to do like a new character. But then again, this feels like they were trying so hard to be as different as possible from that Catwoman. Maybe this is like a body jumping supernatural story where like the spirit of what Midnight, the cat that gave Catwoman her abilities by breathing stank breath on her after she died, maybe like that spirit is the same one that visited Michelle Pfeiffer. So this is like a sequel technically that takes place in a different city, but like the cat, the Mao spirit found Catwoman. I'm sorry. This is just so stupid. This is so dumb. The fact, and they also went so hard with like the lore in this movie. Frances Conroy is in this. Frances Conroy, what are you doing here? Girl, this was clearly before like American Horror Story. She had nothing else to do, I guess, but she was like the exposition dump of this movie. And she was saying like, yes, like there are many Catwomen that have come before you, and a hallmark of their power is that they live freely and they're not restrained by societal norms and blah blah blah. And I was like, okay, this movie's kind of popping off with like the feminist commentary, if I say so myself, but also she's like, yes, the ancient Mao spirit will visit you and give you these abilities, and you'll become a cat and you'll be able to jump and blah blah blah. It was This is utter ridiculousness. This is camp. This is crazy. What's going on here? And then of course like there's another exposition dump and it's Halle Berry like googling ancient cat spirit and like going through all these documents on Google because why not? It's 2006. Let's do it. Speaking of 2006, oh my god. This movie went so hard on just early 2000s visuals. The CGI cityscape. The like Halle Berry, anytime she did any sort of like acrobatics, was instantly turned into CGI Halle Berry. Like it, like the early 2000s time lapses, the crazy needle drops that would just happen like throughout this entire movie. Some of which were kind of cool, like when the outfit reveal, her Catwoman suit. That I did like that. Like that was pretty cool. But like the basketball scene where her and like her police officer boyfriend are playing basketball, and the editing just throughout this whole movie is so crazy, and there's so many like crazy jumps and everything. Speaking of the basketball scene, it was like supposed to be her and her police officer boyfriend like bonding, and they were just like heavily and like sexually flirting in front of all of these kids on a basketball court, like just fully like going freaky in front of this group of kids. Like, hello, lead associate of Groomingdale's over here. Like, just crazy, crazy. I, like I said earlier, the Catwoman, the whole cat thing for every other iteration of Catwoman is mainly an aesthetic. And like she has like maybe like little cat claws, or she might say like meow. It usually does not mean that she has cat like tendencies. I don't know why this decision was made for this movie to make this character act like a cat as well as just be Catwoman. Like just the her making a little bed for herself like up in a shelf instead of sleeping in a bed, her gobbling up the sushi on her sushi date with the police officer guy, her ordering milk at a bar, it her slipping through the bars of the jail cell because cats can do that, I guess. It is just so ridiculous, and I I can't. I don't know if I can talk about this movie anymore. I think this movie may have bested me. I'll try to say something I liked about this. I think that this movie touched on what makes Catwoman interesting, and that thing that it touched on is that she is kind of like she walks this gray area where it's like this duality where she's good but also really bad, where she is not contained by the rules of society and everything. And I think it tackled that message and that aspect pretty well, I think. So that's good, I guess. I think it could have used that message that I think it was able to touch on well. It could have used that and taken it anywhere. It could have taken it so much further. I do think that the villain, played by Sharon Stone, uh, sure, she had like skin made of marble because she was using the evil lotion that was killing people, but she kept using it, so it gave her like superpowers. Sure, why not? Why not? And like, if that's the case, then how did falling out of that window kill her if her skin is like made of marble? I don't fucking know, but her character had like interesting motivation enough, I guess, if I'm trying to be nice, where she said like, "Oh, you turn 40 and then they just throw you away." And she's very bitter because she was replaced as like the cover girl for this makeup company, and she was very much taken advantage of by the CEO or the boss of the makeup company, who very quickly replaced her with the new younger cover girl. Um, and yeah, so it was kind of like a little bit of a substance tease, maybe. I don't know. I This is nowhere near the level of the substance, so just do with that what you. I don't. I'm trying. I'm trying. Um. Yeah, this movie is actually so ridiculous. Like her hissing at people, Halle Berry hissing at people and acting like a cat, and just like the decision making, like how did this come to be? What exactly was the vision? What was the audience? uh, it just felt very uneventful as well. Like, I feel like there wasn't really a conclusion to this message. Like, there wasn't any real character arc with anyone. It was just like, what was the point? Why did I watch this? I think I have to be done talking about this. I think I need to be done. I'm so sorry if you were expecting more, but this is like getting the best of me, I think. I'm going to give Catwoman the Nicks. On nearly every level, the Catwoman film seems to fundamentally misunderstand and misinterpret this character and what fans would hope to see in a movie dedicated to this character. While on some levels I appreciate the creative liberties taken, especially with the subtext, this film is really just dissociated from the version of Catwoman you would hope to see. With jarring, stylish then, dated now, visuals and effects, an incredibly weak story with characters to match, cringy and ridiculous character moments, and heavy lore dumps, this movie is a landmark in the Bad Movie Hall of Fame. Catwoman will tell you in every possible way that it is a product of 2006, and unfortunately, there is no anti-aging lotion for that. I'm getting good with like these little quippy moments, right? I'm going to say the same thing about Catwoman I said about Madame Web. Yes, this is a stupid good time. It's so bad it's good, but only on the first watch. This was also my second time watching Catwoman, and it is not as fun to watch the second time around. Yeah, I was checking my phone a lot through this one as well, and it was painful. It was really painful to get through. Overall, connecting these two films together, I think it is really weird how there are so many similarities between these two films. Both are about a female hero that must die in order to claim an animal related superhero ability, and they must start a new life as that hero. Really strange how specific both of those are, and really strange how horrible both of those turned out to be. I think that the whole like dying and claiming a new life just lends itself to very cliched moments. So maybe that's like what one of the issues was with these. I tend to think that Catwoman is the better movie, but I honestly can't tell because if it is the better movie, it's by like a slim margin. I think that age definitely has not helped Catwoman. I think it's ironic that Madame Web is made in 2000, was released in 2024 and is trying so hard, desperately, to convince you that it takes place in 2003. And then Catwoman, made in 2006, is trying so hard, desperately, to convince you that it is modern and stylish and everything. And in doing so, becomes so quickly dated and an artifact of that time. Very interesting parallels there. I think it's also interesting how Madame Web could have used a lot less of a villain and a lot more like thriller and mystery trope, where I think Catwoman could have used a lot more loyalty to its comic book source material. And it could have used, like, I think maybe a name recognizable villain in the movie. And that's where I thought that Catwoman was maybe, that's where I was hoping it would have gone. For those of you that have seen Batman the Animated Series, there is a plot, the Clayface plot in that show is super, super similar to the plot of this movie. Basically, Clayface overhears this evil plot about this lotion that makes you look younger or something, and the lotion has really bad side effects, and it changes your skin, and that's how he turns into Clayface, is he molds his face into this. So it would have been really cool if like the villain in this movie turned out to be Clayface or something. It would have made this feel more relevant. It would have been cool if they even mentioned Gotham City in the movie, maybe. So yeah, I think Madame Web could have used less reliance on Spider-Man. Catwoman could have used more reliance on Batman stuff. Maybe that's because Catwoman is more well known in that universe, whereas Madame Web is not as well known as like an original character. All right, this was quite a lengthy episode, so there's not going to be any Dear Coffee Nick today. But if you would like to send in a letter, please feel free to DM me at Coffee Nick's Movie Picks or email me coffeenicksmoviepics@gmail.com. I love getting letters. please send them in, say whatever, and I will put it on the show and respond to it. Everyone, thank you for tuning in to the show. Thank you for coming and celebrating the show's first birthday with me. It was so fun to talk about these bad movies, but actually it was pretty exhausting, and talking about bad movies is hard sometimes. But thank you for joining me nonetheless. It was really fun to celebrate one whole year of the show with you all. I cannot wait to see what the show has in store, to keep on making these episodes. It has been such a joy and such a pleasure to have this show in my life, to have it as a creative outlet. So thank you for listening. Thank you for just sticking with me throughout all of it. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Before you go, please be sure to follow the show at Coffee Nick's Movie Picks on Instagram and at Coffee Nick on Blue Sky. There you can stay up to date on everything about the show and see the cool little graphics that I make that I put so much work into. If you like what you heard, please rate the show on your podcast app of choice and share the show with your friends. That is the biggest help to the show. Until next time, New York City is a whole nother level of crazy these days. Thanks again for listening to Coffee Nick's Movie Picks. Our opening theme is The Moondrops, and our closing theme is March of the Hares, both songs by Nathan Moore. Before you go, please be sure to follow the show on social media at Coffee Nick's Movie Picks on Instagram and TikTok, and give the show the Nick Pick by rating it 5 stars on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Thanks again, and see you next time.